Peace be with us this hour of this day as we gather in this loving assembly of family and friends to say goodbye to Robert Butler. Today we gather to grieve Bob's dying and to celebrate his living. Today we grieve Bob's dying because he will not be part of our lives as he once was. And we give thanks for the ways that his life made our own lives richer. Let us shed tears if tears come, but remember that each of us must express our own feelings of loss in our own ways and in our own times. Let us not be afraid of the depths of these feelings, no matter what these feelings may be, knowing that they are a reflection of what Bob's life meant to our own lives. Let us also not be afraid to turn to one another in the days ahead, because we need one another in sympathy and in consolation, in courage and in wisdom, to face Bob's dying, to celebrate his living, and to show our love and support for his family. Bob was a member of this congregation for many years, and the flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition in which this congregation stands. We light this chalice this morning to remind us that we are gathered in a time and a space made sacred by our love and our grief, and made holy by our values, commitments, and the truth we cherish as good and beautiful. In the presence of death, we light this flame because we believe that life is a miracle, nothing less than a miracle, that flowers bloom every spring, that living thing begets living thing, that we human beings emerge again and again from ignorance to knowledge, from hopelessness to meaning, from sadness to joy, and from grief to gratitude. We light this chalice because we believe that life is a miracle, nothing less than a miracle. I invite you to be with me at this time in a spirit of reflection and meditation. We are grieving. There is an emptiness in our lives that wasn't there before. Among us today are those who have lost a husband, a brother, a stepfather, a friend, and a colleague. It is difficult to let go of one who is loved, no matter how long a life. Even if we were given a chance to say all the things we wanted to say, the thank yous, the I'm sorry's, the I forgive you's, the I love you's, and the goodbyes. And so we lift up our hopes. We lift up our hopes for the healings of our own hearts, that our feelings of loss and grief will be smoothed by the achingly slow wisdom of time, and the feelings of fond remembrance and deep gratitude for Bob's life. A life lived not without troubles, and like any life, a life not lived perfectly, but also a life lived with joy and gentleness amid blessings. We lift up our hope that we may come to understand that in every life, no matter how long or how short, there is a completeness. And we lift up our hope that amidst our grief, we will remember the preciousness, the goodness, the beauty, and the miracle of our own lives. We lift up our hope that we may remember that love is stronger than death, and that on the far side of grief there is the possibility of new life for us all.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun.
Bob kept a small stack of cards on his desk, each printed with a saying. And Pat credits these with helping Bob maintain a positive attitude even when his life was difficult. And I'd like to share some of these with you now. Surround yourself with people you love, beginning with yourself. Do what's simple. Notice what makes sense. If what you're doing isn't working, do anything else. If you want success, notice your successes. Pause. Trust that this has only benevolent intent. Practice being present with what is. Smile. Be patient. Intend for it to be as it is. Notice what you're feeling. Have faith in your dreams. Just breathe. Make room for all this right now. Fall in love with yourself in this moment. Respond non-habitually. Practice not knowing. If you want clarity, clear the space. Give your full attention to one thing at a time. Notice where you're connected. It's okay to do it wrong. Just do what you can, no matter how small. Notice what lights you up. Be gentle with what is. Be grateful for all that exists right now. We're now going to sing together. We're going to sing Come Sing a Song with Me. Jim is going to play along with us on saxophone. Will you please stand as you're able and let's sing. Robert Wayne Butler was born July 12, 1937 in Lubbock, Texas, to the parents Wayne Butler and Velta Lee Butler. He died on October 21, 2004. He's survived by his wife, Pat, brother, Richard, and wife, Raleigh of Colorado, nieces, Eliana, and partner Tina Codling and family of New Mexico, Shauna Butler of Colorado, cousins, Linda Waddell and Susan Utz of Texas, stepchildren, Mireille Cameron of Colorado and John Burton Cameron III of North Carolina, grandchildren, Alan Cameron, Marguerite Cameron, and Julia Cameron, stepdaughters, Kim Nimmer and husband Terry, and their daughters Sienna and Mira, and Pamela Santos and husband Amberoix and their son Diego. In 1946, Bob's family moved to Fort Worth, Texas. Because he made straight A's from the 1st to the 12th grade, Bob was awarded a college scholarship from his father's business and the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He graduated summa cum laude from Texas Christian University in 1959 with a BA in International Affairs and Spanish. He studied the next year at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico before enlisting in the Army, 1961-1963, when he was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. Bob, with his knowledge of international issues, his fluency in Spanish and language ability, he hoped to enter the U.S. Foreign Service after his Army enlistment. However, he became disillusioned with government service after his experience with the Army and the state of political and international affairs of the times. So he then enrolled at the University of Texas, earning his master's degree in Latin American history in 1967. And research work for his PhD was conducted in Venezuela, and he earned his PhD from the University of Texas in 1972. Bob taught Latin American history first at the University of Southwestern Louisiana from 1970 until 1988. Bob joked that he chose to teach in Louisiana over a position in North Dakota because he didn't want to spend the rest of his life in an icebox. He was married at that time to Sandra Cameron and became stepfather to John Burton Cameron III and Mireille Cameron. Bob had a wide circle of friends, and they enjoyed dinner parties and celebrating Mardi Gras and just enjoying life. Bob was a terrific teacher, a good friend to many who remember his warm smile, lively conversation, and his great laugh. Bob moved to North Carolina in 1989, teaching at NC State until he retired in 2011. As a professor, he published articles about Latin American studies and history. Being the consummate professor, Bob read numerous professional journals, newspapers, especially the New York Times, and many other academic publications. Bob was actively involved here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, coming here soon after his divorce. He taught an introduction to Unitarian Universalism class for several years. He also managed the welcome table, warmly greeting visitors. He was a faithful participant in the early Sunday morning forum. Bob loved his wine, spending weekly trips to wine shops to find the best ones that fit his budget and his palate. On his trips to visit his brother in Colorado, Bob always explored wine shops to find local ones that matched his taste. Bob always had a good joke or two to share. His favorite jokes, however, focused on the Texas Aggies of Texas A&M University. On one occasion, he entertained fellow backpackers in the midst of a Colorado mountain storm with several hours of Aggie jokes, while lightning bounced off narrow Colorado cliffs above. He met his wife, Pat, here at UUFR, and they were married in 2007. They enjoyed traveling to many places in the United States, including train trips to Colorado, an excursion boat trip to Alaska, and places all around the South, including trips they took in the fall to the western North Carolina mountains to see the fall foliage. Bob and Pat cared greatly for the people of Raleigh, involving themselves in community activities, politics, and social life. He was an important influence on his brother's life by sharing his love for all things Latin America. He gave generously to aid organizations and urged others to give as well. Before his death, he arranged to have his body donated to medical research so he could even continue to benefit others after he died. Pat says that even at the end of his life, he continued to be very considerate and supportive of her after returning home from one of her many community activities. He was never resentful, but always caringly asked, "How was it?" Above all, Pat says, Bob was loving, kind, considerate, and generous. For all this and for so much more, Bob was loved. For all this and so much more, he will be so deeply missed. It's my understanding that Mireille has some remembrances from Bob's brother, and I invite you to just come forward and stand up here. And could I ask AV to turn on the pulpit mic?
Hi, good morning. Can you all hear me? So about the time that Bob moved to South Louisiana, his brother and Raleigh made their way to Colorado. So as luck would have it, I made my way to Colorado, to the Boulder area around 2006. So I had a built-in family. It was fantastic. North Carolina family, Colorado family. We had a great connection across country. Richard's not able to travel, so he asked, since we were going to be here today, that I could share a few words. So this will be from his voice. Good morning. Thank you for coming to remember my brother Bob. I'm his only sibling, and there are only 2 cousins left in our generation. As you heard earlier, we grew up in Lubbock and Fort Worth, Texas. Bob left Texas for Louisiana and North Carolina, but I wouldn't call him a typical Southerner. He wanted a better world for all people, teaching young people in 2 universities about the complexities of world history and encouraging them to be involved citizens. He believed in the equality of all persons and supported social justice work. Bob was my mentor while I was growing up. He was 6 years older than I, which gave him a big leg up on me. I have many memories of playing games, football, and basketball with him, none of which I won. So he taught me early on to lose, even if it wasn't gracefully. It was a good lesson to learn early in life, but he always encouraged me to engage with him, and that was the great lesson, to always keep trying. And as you know, or maybe you don't, Bob was good with Romance languages. He spoke Spanish fluently and some Portuguese and even French. Here in North Carolina, he was a translator for Spanish-speaking residents before local courts for a few years. Bob studied Spanish in Monterrey, Mexico for 5 or 6 summers in high school and college. He did his doctoral research in Caracas, Venezuela, and for 1 year living on the top floor of a high-rise apartment in downtown. It was a great view of the city above the smog. Bob is the reason I took Spanish in junior high school over shop, and that was a terrific benefit for me later in life. Bob had a positive view of life. He loved jokes, and as we've heard this morning, especially Texas Aggie ones. Because of the intense rivalry between the University of Texas and Texas A&M, this is where his jokes stem from. And he preferred warm climates over the cold ones, as illustrated by the fact that he chose the University of Louisiana over North Dakota, as we heard, South Dakota, rather. North Carolina was definitely more to his liking, even if he had to wear long underwear most of the year. Bob loved classical music, opera, and, of course, the New York Times. Even away from home, he would seek out the New York Times to get his daily fix. But I believe he loved wine more than anything else. His visits to Colorado always included spending time in the local wine shops, seeking the best of the cheapest ones. Bob was raised in the Southern Baptist version of Christianity in East Texas. In the 50s and 60s, Southern Baptists were more moderate than the ones of today. By the time he started his doctoral studies at the University of Texas, he had abandoned the earlier tradition. I'm sure that Mom and Dad thought he and I, for matter, were going to hell. But he had no fear of hell since he really didn't believe in it. The greatest benefit of the Baptist experience was teaching him to love people and expect the best of all he met. His joining the Unitarian Universal Fellowship gave him a spiritual home closer to his beliefs. And of course, he met his wife Pat. It's bound to happen. He met his wife Pat at the UU of Raleigh, a source of immense comfort to him. Bob was a great brother. He was always supportive of my ventures, my choices in life, my wife, my children, his stepchildren, and step-grandchildren. We supported each other when our parents died, when we had health challenges, and when we each had major life changes and trials. I miss not sharing fun and good times now, but we had many great times together in our youth. I'm sure you will miss him as I do. Please remember that he loved you, and I'm sure he is resting in peace. Thank you.
And Art, would you please come forward and share some memories on behalf of a men's gathering here at UUFR?
I am Art Lieberman, and we have a group of about 10 men. We meet monthly for dinner, and we eat, and we talk a lot about nothing, and we laugh to a point where it should be illegal. And Bob was an integral part of our group. After Bob's passing, we each wrote down our thoughts, and we shared them with Pat. And we've been asked to share them with everybody else today. So we wrote, Bob was truly a gentleman and a scholar, a very kind man. Bob will be missed. He was always interesting to talk to, had great knowledge of countries south of our border. I enjoyed doing the Introduction to UU class with Bob for several years. He was great covering the UU history. Bob was such a nice guy and so modest. As a professor, he knew so much about South and Central America and related topics. However, I seldom remember him holding forth in any of our discussions unless he was asked, and a question was always followed by his thorough response. My having some business in NCSU Harrelson Hall years ago, I passed by a classroom. I was startled to hear this authoritative-sounding, full-volume lecture going on. I was surprised to look in the room and see that it was Bob. Bob was a remarkably consistent person in most every respect. He didn't eat meat. He didn't eat desserts. Didn't watch TV, didn't use a computer, never criticized others or brag about anything. He was comfortable with most everyone, but never sought out attention. I'm really glad that Bob was part of our group, and I'm sure he felt the same way. He will always be a part of our men's dinner group, in our minds and in our hearts every time we meet.
Thank you so much, Art. If there's others who'd like to share a memory or share a reflection, I'd invite you to come forward now, or if you'd be more comfortable, I can bring a handheld mic to you.
Good morning. First of all, I just want to thank Pat and all of y'all for clearly, the life that I know Bob loved here. And I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for y'all and the church and the whole community. And as the gentleman said, yes, at Harrelson Hall, I was privileged to hear him give a few lectures there. And in Lafayette at the University of Louisiana, he was an outstanding teacher. I will follow about the wine. One thing about Bob, and if you've ever been to supper with him, you'll know what he'll say when he orders the wine with the meal. He always would say, with the meal. So he didn't want him to open it right there and set it in front of it. Nope, with the meal. So I was thinking about him recently, and Mireille and I were talking about it. As a young fellow growing up in Texas, he was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And, they just recently beat that team from the Bronx. And I know he was relishing that. So, but an outstanding stepfather for my sister and I. Growing up, you know how teenagers are. He definitely earned some stripes doing that job. Oh, my goodness. And we were talking with Pat and Pam and Kim, and talking about how he was involved with grandchildren with them, and with my 3 children, just an outstanding grandfather, loving and caring, and just a fine person. And there'll be a lot of memories that I'll have, over the years. But again, just thank you to everyone here that's been a part of his life, and I just echo what everybody said about him and the love that he brings forth. Thank you.
Roger, would you like to say a few words?
Good morning. My name is Roger McFeeters. I was involved with Bob in a number of ways for many years. As has already been said, he was raised in apparently a relatively liberal Baptist church in Texas, and he eventually wound up here at UUFR. He came here, his first Sunday service at UUFR was the day that we had our first service in this sanctuary. We had been holding our services downstairs in the room where you will be for his reception. We'd been meeting there for a few years, and during that time we had built this sanctuary. And so we came up and we started our service downstairs. We came upstairs and sang our way into this room. And he was impressed because apparently what we sang that day, and I was here, and I'm not sure if my memory is so clear, but it said, "We are the change you are looking for." And then shortly after that, he took his introduction to UUFR class, which I was a teacher of at the time, along with Tom Atkinson. And then a little while later, Bob became the co-teacher of that class with me. And he did that for, I can't remember how long, 4 or 5, 6 years. We did it for quite a while together. He always taught the history part, and given that he was a professional historian, he certainly added a lot to the history compared to what I could have possibly done myself. And then he took over those classes as the lead teacher after I left. And he did a wonderful service to this community by doing that for so long. I also had the good fortune to be with Bob as a part of a group called the Traveling Forks. This was an eating group. We've heard Bob liked to eat. There's an eating group that was formed by his wife, Pat. And so we would go to a different ethnic restaurant each month. And the comments I'm going to say have already been said. He liked good food. He liked good wine. He did not like noisy restaurants. And as you heard from Art before, Bob was also a member, and I'm a co-member of, Art didn't give our real name. We are the Unbook Club. The Unbook Club is mostly the male spouses of women of the book club. We do not read books, unlike our wives. We do not discuss books seriously, unlike our wives. The Un Club, as I say, specifically did not read books. And so we got together, as Art said, we eat, we solve the world's problems, and we laughed a lot. And it was great being with him during the number of years he was with us. So I'm so grateful for having had Bob as a part of my life in a number of different ways. And he's been a wonderful part of the UU community, and we are missing him.
Thank you, Roger. Would anyone else like to share a memory? Then let's be together now in stillness and in silence, reflecting during this time about what Bob's life meant to our own lives and what our own lives meant to Bob's. Now is the time to prepare ourselves for the leaving. We give thanks for the life of Bob Butler. We give thanks that he lived. We give thanks for the ways that he made our own lives fuller and richer. We give thanks for how he made this world a better place to live. We hold in our heart those who loved Bob most and feel his loss the most. We pray in the coming days that life may grant them acceptance and peace. as we leave this place, may we do so with ever more love for one another, with ever more awe and gratitude for this precious gift of life that we share among ourselves this very day, with ever more peace in our hearts, and with ever more hope for our own lives in this world we share. Amen.